Ezekiel Thornfield was meticulously polishing his prized, handcrafted boots when the chilling echo of war drums reverberated through Cedar Canyon. He stilled, the chamois cloth suspended in midair, the rhythmic pounding assaulting the senses, amplified as it bounced off the canyon walls like relentless thunder. Today, after years of hopeful anticipation, Catherine was scheduled to arrive from Kansas City. He'd sought solace in the solitude of this remote ranch for 3 long years, painstakingly carving out a life in Colorado Territory's most isolated valley. The nearest neighbor resided a daunting 15 miles away, a distance that suited him perfectly until this very moment. The drums signified a single terrifying truth. The infamous Kiowa War Party, notorious for its brutal raids on settlements 50 miles south, was advancing northward, and their proximity was deeply unsettling. Ezekiel cautiously ventured onto his porch, his calloused hands instinctively gripping the weathered wooden railing. The afternoon sun cast elongated shadows across his property, yet an undeniable sense of foreboding permeated the air. The cattle, typically grazing peacefully, were now huddled anxiously near the barn, their agitation palpable. Even Marshall, his loyal canine companion, whined softly, his ears pinned flat against his head. He retrieved his late father's cherished spyglass from within the rustic cabin and ascended onto the roof, seeking a vantage point. The scene that unfolded through the lens sent a jolt of icy dread through his veins. Obscure figures were strategically positioned along the ridgeline, numbering at least a dozen within his immediate view. However, these were neither scouts nor a mere raiding party. As he meticulously adjusted the focus, more silhouettes emerged, an ominous proliferation. They commanded every conceivable exit point from the valley. The chilling realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. This was not a fleeting raid. They were not merely passing through. A formidable force of 400 warriors, possibly even more, had completely encircled Cedar Canyon, transforming his sanctuary into a meticulously crafted trap. A wave of nausea washed over Ezekiel as the thought of Catherine seized his mind. Her stagecoach, he recalled with dread, was scheduled to arrive before sunset, utilizing the main trail that snaked directly through what had instantaneously become enemy territory. She was entirely unaware of the peril she was riding headlong into, completely oblivious to the fact that the man she had agreed to marry sight unseen had suddenly become the most perilous individual to be associated with in all of Colorado Territory. He descended from the roof with haste, his mind ablaze with frantic calculations. The logical course of action would be to swiftly mount his horse and attempt a daring escape through the narrow, winding creek bed on the eastern flank. He might, conceivably, evade their watchful eyes under the cloak of impending darkness, yet such an act would condemn Catherine to a grim and uncertain fate upon her stagecoach's arrival in this valley of impending doom. The war drums intensified, growing increasingly louder and more insistent. They no longer merely declared their presence, they were engaged in a sinister form of communication, coordinating a meticulously crafted plan. The commencement was imminent. Unbeknownst to Ezekiel, the war party's shrewd leader had been observing him meticulously for weeks, patiently awaiting this precise moment. The impending arrival of his bride was far from coincidental. It was meticulously orchestrated. With trembling hands, Ezekiel loaded his trusty Winchester rifle, meticulously counting his ammunition. A mere 43 rounds against a formidable force of 400 warriors. The arithmetic was stark and terrifying. He recalled chilling tales of isolated settlers who had fallen prey to war parties of this magnitude, tales that invariably ended in tragedy. He reflected upon Catherine's most recent letter, still carefully folded within his shirt pocket. She had effusively expressed her excitement at the prospect of finally meeting him, detailing her exquisite new dress meticulously chosen for their wedding, and eloquently articulating her dreams of embarking upon a new chapter in the Colorado Territory, a place where her past remained unknown. She had entrusted him with her safety, with the promise of providing the life she had so passionately envisioned. Now, his very existence threatened to condemn her to a horrific fate. Abruptly, the war drums ceased. The ensuing silence proved even more unnerving than the preceding cacophony. Ezekiel strained his ears, desperately seeking any semblance of sound, yet even the wind appeared to have deserted the valley. This was the eerie calm that invariably preceded a cataclysmic event. Then he detected it. The distinct sound of approaching hoofbeats, not the thundering charge he had anticipated, but the steady, rhythmic clip-clop of a lone horse approaching from the south trail. His heart pounded against his ribs with a frantic urgency as he recognized the implication. Someone was unwittingly riding directly into the meticulously prepared trap, completely unaware of the multitude of warriors strategically positioned along every ridge. Employing his spyglass once more, he identified the rider, a young Kiowa brave, but something was amiss. The warrior's hands were conspicuously raised, and he brandished a pristine white cloth affixed to a lengthy stick, a universal symbol of truce. The horse advanced slowly, deliberately, as if the rider wished to be observed from a considerable distance. Ezekiel's mind raced, attempting to decipher the situation. Throughout his 3 years residing in this valley, he had never encountered any direct interaction with tribal war parties. He had heard anecdotal accounts of them occasionally taking prisoners for the purpose of negotiation, yet this encounter felt distinctly different, decidedly more personal. The brave was headed directly towards his cabin, as if possessing intimate knowledge of its precise location. The rider halted a mere 50 yards from the porch, well within rifle range, yet sufficiently far to convey his lack of immediate hostile intentions. He appeared young, perhaps in his early 20s, adorned with intricate war paint that covered half of his face. Yet what truly captured Ezekiel's attention was the man's piercing gaze. It lacked the anticipated rage and fury. Instead, it conveyed an unnerving sense of satisfaction, as if events were unfolding precisely as planned. In heavily accented English, the brave called out, "Ezekiel Thornfield, we have need to speak." The stranger's familiarity with his name sent a chilling wave of dread through Ezekiel's veins. Rifle poised, yet not yet aimed, Ezekiel cautiously stepped onto his porch. "Speak about what?" The warrior's lips subtly curved into what could have been interpreted as a faint smile. "About the woman for whom you eagerly await, about the underlying reason for our presence." He paused strategically, allowing his words to penetrate. "About the excruciating choice that will confront you upon her stagecoach's arrival in 2 hours." Yet what the brave subsequently uttered would irrevocably shatter everything Ezekiel thought he knew about this fateful day. The brave's words impacted Ezekiel with the force of a physical assault. "Your bride does not arrive by chance, Thornfield. She comes because someone meticulously informed her of the precise time and location to find you." Ezekiel's grip on his rifle tightened instinctively. "What are you insinuating? Catherine and I have corresponded extensively for months. She willingly chose to come here." The warrior shook his head slowly, his expression conveying skepticism. "Letters can be forged by anyone. The woman you believe you know does not exist." He reached into a meticulously crafted leather pouch and produced a folded piece of paper. "This is the genuine Catherine Morrison. She succumbed to a fever in Kansas City 3 weeks prior." The color drained from Ezekiel's face, leaving him pale and shaken. The brave casually tossed the paper onto the ground between them. Even from a distance, Ezekiel could discern that it was an official death certificate. The woman he had been planning to marry, the woman who had penned such eloquent letters expressing their shared future, was already entombed in a Kansas cemetery. "And who travels on that stagecoach?" Ezekiel's voice barely registered above a whisper. "Someone who requires you to believe she is Catherine Morrison, someone whose value warrants the presence of 400 warriors." The brave's eyes glinted with what resembled pity. "Someone you have encountered previously, though you remain oblivious to her true identity." Ezekiel's mind spiraled into chaos. Nothing made logical sense. Why would anyone orchestrate such an elaborate deception? Who could possibly possess a value sufficient to justify encircling an entire valley with a formidable war party? He desperately searched his memories, attempting to recall any woman who might harbor a motive to deceive him in such a manner. "You lie," he stated, yet his voice lacked conviction. Too many fragmented pieces were aligning, forming a disconcerting pattern. The letters, he now conceded, had always seemed excessively perfect, unnaturally understanding. Catherine had never sought specific details regarding his property, never questioned his choice of such a remote location. She had accepted everything without the inherent curiosity that a genuine woman would have undoubtedly displayed. The brave continued. 3 years ago, you were a vastly different man. You resided in a different place. You committed actions that left indelible scars on the lives of others. He gestured towards the ridgelines where the other warriors patiently awaited. She has engaged our services to ensure that you cannot flee upon her arrival. She desires to gaze into your eyes as she unveils her true identity. Ezekiel's legs felt weakened. There had existed a period preceding his arrival in this valley, before he had attempted to transform into a simple rancher, a period when he had proudly worn a badge and, in doing so, had inadvertently created enemies. A period when his decisions had yielded consequences that followed individuals to their graves. He had naively believed that that chapter of his life was firmly closed, that 3 years of isolated penance had been sufficient. The sound of approaching wheels shattered his introspective thoughts. A stagecoach was laboriously ascending the southern trail, just barely visible through the canyon's narrow opening. The woman within confidently believed she was on the verge of meeting her future husband, completely unaware that she was, in reality, being delivered into the epicenter of a meticulously planned trap. The brave intently observed Ezekiel's face, scrutinizing every discernible emotion. "You still do not recall, do you?" the warrior inquired. Sheriff Thornfield of Deadwood Creek, the man who consigned innocent individuals to their final resting place due to an unyielding pride that prevented him from admitting his errors. The words struck Ezekiel with the force of bullets. Sheriff Thornfield, a name he had desperately attempted to bury along with the badge he had ceremoniously cast into a river 3 years prior. Fragments of memories flooded back. The ill-fated raid on the trading post, the innocent family tragically caught in the crossfire, the heart-wrenching screams of the little girl as bullets whizzed past. He had been so certain that he was pursuing the correct perpetrators, so utterly convinced that he was delivering justice to the frontier. Yet he had been tragically mistaken, catastrophically wrong. The Morrison family, Ezekiel whispered, the full magnitude of the horror finally dawning upon him. Catherine Morrison was not arriving to marry him. She was already deceased, a consequence of his actions. The brave nodded grimly. Her sister Sarah miraculously survived that horrific day. She dedicated the past 2 years to meticulously planning this very moment, painstakingly learning everything about you, relentlessly tracking you down, following your disappearance. He gestured towards the approaching stagecoach. She meticulously crafted those letters. She transformed herself into Catherine in every significant aspect, solely to be granted the opportunity to confront you directly. "What does she seek?" Ezekiel inquired, though he already possessed the answer. "Justice, the brand of justice you denied her family." The brave's voice remained cold, yet conveyed an undeniable respect. "She could have readily employed us to terminate your existence. It would have been simpler, yet she desired you to understand the reason for your impending demise, to indelibly imprint their faces upon your memory as your end drew near." The sound of wheels grinding on gravel grew progressively louder. The stagecoach driver began to decelerate, observing the cabin ahead. In mere moments, Sarah Morrison would emerge from that stagecoach and confront the man responsible for shattering her childhood in a maelstrom of misdirected bullets. Ezekiel contemplated fleeing. His horse stood saddled and prepared in the barn, yet 400 warriors effectively sealed the valley's perimeter, and more significantly, he knew that he deserved whatever fate Sarah had meticulously planned for him. He had devoted 3 years to attempting to erase the events that had transpired at Deadwood Creek, yet the deceased refused to remain buried when the living obstinately refused to grant them peace. The stagecoach drew to a halt directly in front of his cabin. The driver respectfully tipped his hat and cheerfully announced, "Delivery for Mr. Thornfield. Your bride has arrived safe and sound." Yet, the ensuing events following Sarah Morrison's disembarkation from that stagecoach would definitively demonstrate that certain wounds never heal, and certain debts can only be settled through bloodshed. The stagecoach door creaked open, and a woman descended onto the dusty ground. She bore no resemblance to the image Ezekiel had conjured of Catherine Morrison. This woman possessed a commanding height and a lean build, with dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that mirrored the frigid intensity of someone who had endured prolonged suffering. She wore a simple traveling dress, yet her movements hinted at the predatory nature of a hunter circling its prey. Sarah Morrison bore an uncanny resemblance to her father. The striking similarity elicited a pang of fresh guilt within Ezekiel's chest. The same strong jawline, the same piercing blue eyes, the same unwavering stance that conveyed her unwillingness to yield to anyone or anything. The stagecoach driver dismounted to unload her trunk, cheerfully commenting on the pleasant weather and scenic surroundings. He remained blissfully unaware that he had just delivered a woman directly to her family's killer, or that 400 warriors meticulously observed his every move from the encompassing ridges. Sarah compensated the driver and dismissed him with a smile that failed to reach her eyes. She patiently waited until the stagecoach vanished around the bend before turning to confront Ezekiel directly. The transformation was instantaneous and chilling. The pleasant facade she had maintained for the driver's benefit crumbled, replaced by 3 years of meticulously cultivated animosity. "Hello, Sheriff Thornfield," she stated, her voice steady and calm. "Or do you now prefer Ezekiel? I presume that men such as yourself readily change names as you change towns." Ezekiel placed his rifle against the porch railing. Further pretense served no purpose. "Sarah, you have matured significantly. It is remarkable what surviving a massacre can do to an individual." She approached, each step measured and deliberate. "I was 12 years old when you and your posse stormed our trading post, guns blazing, pursuing phantoms and labeling it justice." The brave who had delivered the message remained mounted, observing the confrontation with the detached patience of someone witnessing a meticulously choreographed performance. Behind him, Ezekiel detected more warriors strategically shifting into position along the canyon walls, not overtly threatening, yet conspicuously present, reinforcing the futility of escape. Sarah halted 10 feet from the porch. "I dedicated 2 years to meticulously tracking you down following your disappearance from Deadwood Creek. 2 years to mastering the art of writing like a lonely woman yearning for love. 2 years to perfecting Catherine's voice so that you would believe every utterance." "Why, Ezekiel?" she asked, though she was fully cognizant of the futility of the question. "Why not merely instruct them to kill me? Why engage in this elaborate scheme?" Sarah's laugh possessed a sharp, bitter quality. "Because a bullet would have been too facile, too swift. I desired you to experience hope initially, to believe that you had discovered happiness, to believe that you had evaded the consequences of what you inflicted upon my family." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears that had been suppressed for 3 long years. "I desired you to experience the emotions we endured when your bullets found us instead of the outlaws you were purportedly pursuing." Yet, Sarah's subsequent revelation would unveil the true depth of her meticulously crafted plan and illuminate the reason for assembling an entire war party to witness this pivotal moment of reckoning. Sarah reached into her traveling bag and produced a small, exquisitely crafted wooden box. Ezekiel recognized it instantly. It had belonged to her late father, Thomas Morrison. The old man had meticulously carved it himself and had safeguarded his most cherished possessions within. Witnessing it now in Sarah's possession elicited a fresh surge of guilt within Ezekiel's stomach. "Do you recall what you uttered to me on that fateful day, Ezekiel?" she asked, her voice barely maintaining composure. "Following the cessation of gunfire, and after you realized the extent of the damage inflicted by your posse?" Ezekiel closed his eyes, the memory assaulting him with physical force. "I expressed my remorse, asserting that it was an accident, that we were pursuing dangerous criminals and that such events are commonplace on the frontier," Sarah finished. "That my family had unfortunately found themselves in the incorrect location at the incorrect time, that I should be grateful that you apprehended the actual outlaws before they could inflict harm upon others." She opened the wooden box, revealing something glistening within. Not a weapon, but something far more devastating. Irrefutable evidence. "Except you never apprehended the actual outlaws, did you, Sheriff?" You abandoned the pursuit after the devastation inflicted upon us, deeming the case too convoluted, too problematic, involving an excessive amount of paperwork. The brave shifted in his saddle, his gaze darting between Sarah and Ezekiel, as if observing a carefully orchestrated performance. This extended beyond mere vengeance. It was intrinsically linked to something far greater. Sarah extracted a folded document from the box. I located them, Ezekiel, the individuals you were genuinely pursuing on that day. It required 3 years, but I succeeded. She unfolded the paper, revealing wanted posters and sworn statements. They persist in their criminal activities, continuing to rob and kill, owing to the fact that you were too ashamed of your error to complete the mission. The words impacted Ezekiel with greater force than any bullet. Consumed by guilt and horror over the Morrison family's tragic demise, he had abandoned his badge and fled into the wilderness. He had attempted to rationalize his actions, convincing himself that it constituted a form of penance, that he was removing himself from a position he was too dangerous to occupy. Yet the truth remained simpler and more cowardly. He had shirked his responsibilities. The Garrett gang has claimed the lives of 14 additional individuals since the Deadwood Creek massacre, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength with each deliberate word. 14 individuals who would undoubtedly still be alive had you fulfilled your duties instead of retreating to this valley to indulge in a charade of being a cowboy. Ezekiel felt the cumulative weight of those deaths pressing upon his shoulders. It was sufficiently egregious that he had inadvertently caused the deaths of innocent individuals through his recklessness. Yet the realization that his cowardice had precipitated further deaths, further shattered families, caused him to feel overwhelmed by guilt. Sarah held up another document. This constitutes a territorial warrant for the Garrett gang, currently active and entirely valid. She fixed him with a stare of cold determination. You are obligated to assist me in completing the task you initiated 3 years ago. You are obligated to aid me in hunting them down. And should I refuse? Ezekiel inquired, though he was already cognizant of the inevitable response. Sarah gestured towards the warriors strategically positioned around the canyon. Then my allies here will ensure that you never depart from this valley. However, your death will not resurrect my family, nor will it prevent the Garrett gang from claiming more innocent lives. She drew nearer, her eyes burning with purpose. I seek justice, Ezekiel. Genuine justice, not mere retribution. The brave spoke for the first time since Sarah's arrival. The choice is yours, former sheriff. Perish here as a coward, or extend your lifespan sufficiently to potentially earn some semblance of redemption. Yet, Sarah's subsequent revelation concerning the Garrett gang's most recent target would compel Ezekiel to make the most agonizing decision of his existence. Sarah extracted a final document from the wooden box, and Ezekiel discerned her hands trembling slightly for the first time since her arrival. The Garrett gang no longer confines its activities to targeting random travelers, Ezekiel. They have become organized, more cunning. She presented him with a telegram dated only 5 days prior. They are plotting an attack on the children's train next week. A wave of icy dread washed over Ezekiel as he meticulously read the telegram. Each month, a specialized train transported orphaned children from overcrowded eastern cities to new adoptive families in the Western Territories. 43 children, ranging in age from 6 to 15, would be aboard that train, defenseless children seeking new homes and the promise of a brighter future. The train routinely stops in Millfield to replenish its water supply, Sarah continued. It's an isolated station, devoid of law enforcement presence for 50 miles in any direction. The gang is aware that the train transports a strongbox containing adoption fees and family payments. They are indifferent to the fact that innocent children will be ensnared in the crossfire. The brave nodded grimly. We have been meticulously tracking the Garrett gang for weeks. They now command a force of 30 men, well-armed and desperate. Their preparations for this impending raid have spanned several months. Ezekiel felt profoundly ill. More innocent children mirroring Sarah's situation 3 years ago, more families destined to be shattered owing to his cowardice in failing to complete the task he had initiated. A clear pattern emerged. His shortcomings were continually amplified, creating more victims, perpetuating more suffering. Why approach me, Ezekiel? She asked. You could relay this information to the territorial marshal, the cavalry, any entity possessing genuine authority. Sarah's laughter was tinged with bitterness. I attempted to do so. They dismissed the intelligence as unreliable due to its origin from tribal sources. They refused to act upon the testimony of Kiowa warriors even when the lives of children are at stake. She gestured towards the brave. Running Elk's people have been meticulously observing the gang, gathering evidence, attempting to avert this potential massacre, yet white authorities remain deaf to their pleas. Running Elk spoke with conviction. Our children have been forcibly taken on trains such as this, stolen from their families and sent to distant boarding schools. We intimately understand the profound anguish of children being wrenched away from those who cherish them. His voice resonated with profound sorrow. We shall not permit more children to perish because grown men are too consumed by pride to collaborate effectively. Ezekiel comprehended the full scope of Sarah's meticulously orchestrated plan. This extended beyond mere vengeance for her family's tragic demise. She had forged an alliance uniting her pursuit of justice with the Kiowa's resolute determination to protect innocent children. She had transmuted his guilt into a potent weapon capable of saving lives. The train is scheduled to arrive in Millfield in 4 days, Sarah stated. We can reach the location within 3 if we maintain a relentless pace. You possess an unparalleled understanding of the Garrett Gang's operational methods. You intimately know their thought processes, their operational procedures. She paused, allowing the gravity of the moment to permeate the atmosphere. You cannot resurrect my family, Ezekiel, but you possess the power to save those children. The sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the valley. Ezekiel gazed upon his cabin, his cattle, the tranquil existence he had meticulously constructed to escape his tumultuous past. All of it suddenly appeared trivial compared to the lives of 43 children destined to perish should he prioritize comfort over courage. The decision he was poised to make would dictate whether he perished as the coward who fled from Deadwood Creek, or as the man who finally mustered the fortitude to confront his shortcomings. Ezekiel entered his cabin and reappeared moments later, clutching his sheriff's badge. He had concealed it within an antiquated coffee tin, unable to completely discard it despite the pervasive sense of shame it evoked. The metal felt frigid and heavy in his palm, burdened by all the errors he had committed and all the opportunities he had squandered to rectify his past actions. I will assist you, he stated, pinning the badge onto his shirt, not because I merit redemption, but because those children deserve to live. Sarah nodded imperceptibly, and for the first time since her arrival, a glimmer of what could have been construed as respect flickered within her eyes. This act will not reconcile our accounts, Ezekiel. Nothing can restore my family. I am aware, he replied, but perhaps we can prevent another family from enduring the same ordeal you have suffered. Running Elk dismounted and approached them both. My warriors will accompany us on this endeavor. The Garrett Gang has plundered from our people, claimed the lives of our young men, and stolen our horses. This debt must be repaid. Within an hour, they were prepared to depart. Ezekiel had gathered his weaponry, provisions, and his most reliable horse. Sarah had changed into practical riding attire and armed herself with a rifle that appeared well used and meticulously maintained. The warriors emerged from their concealed positions surrounding the valley, forming a disciplined force united by their collective desire to safeguard innocent lives. As they rode out of Cedar Canyon in unison, Ezekiel recognized the brilliance inherent in Sarah's meticulously crafted plan. Her intentions extended beyond merely terminating his existence. She sought to compel him to transform into the man he should have embodied 3 years prior. The man who relentlessly pursued the completion of his tasks. The man who diligently protected the innocent instead of evading his failures. The alliance appeared unconventional and fragile. A disgraced former sheriff, a young woman consumed by an insatiable thirst for justice, and a Kiowa war party united in their resolute determination to safeguard children they had never encountered. Yet, it was also demonstrably powerful. They possessed skills the Garrett Gang could not anticipate, knowledge they could not foretell, and motivations that transcended simple avarice. The journey to Millfield would traverse perilous terrain, passing through settlements that might not welcome the sight of armed Kiowa warriors. Yet Ezekiel found himself experiencing an uncharacteristic surge of hope for the first time in 3 years, not predicated on the belief that he could earn forgiveness, as certain errors remained too egregious to be excused, but owing to the fact that he finally possessed the opportunity to channel his guilt into something constructive. Sarah rode beside him in silence for the initial few miles, before quietly stating, "My father often asserted that commendable men were not those who never committed errors. Rather, they were those who possessed the courage to rectify their errors, irrespective of the personal cost." Ezekiel nodded somberly, understanding that this gesture represented the closest he would ever come to receiving absolution from her. It would have to suffice. 4 days hence, when the children's train pulled into Millfield Station, it would encounter not only the Garrett gang lying in wait, but also a determined force of protectors resolutely prepared to ensure that this time, the innocent would not bear the consequences of the avarice of wicked men. The man who had once been too cowardly to confront his failures was finally prepared to transform into the sheriff he should have been all along. So, in the end, our story highlights the enduring power of redemption found in unexpected alliances, even when born from deep-seated pain and a thirst for justice. It's a reminder that confronting our past mistakes, no matter how heavy, can pave the way for a brighter, more hopeful future, and that sometimes the path to healing requires us to fight for something bigger than ourselves. What did you think of Ezekiel's journey? Were you surprised by Sarah's plan, or did you see it coming? I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or any interpretations you have about the story in the comments below. Let's get a discussion going. And if you enjoyed this tale of forgiveness and second chances, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future stories. There are plenty more compelling narratives to come. Thanks for watching.